Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today, as you can see, I am doing a sit down talkie video, and I just wanted to go through my experience and some of my journey with eating disorders. Now, I do just want to start by saying, obviously this is my personal experience. I am not a doctor. This is just literally my experience, and you might be able to take something from it. I do always advise seeking professional help if you do need so, if you are struggling. There are some helplines out there like Beat and anorexia and bulimia.com, and I will link a few more just below. I personally didn't use any of these helplines myself, but I do know that places like this do offer good support, so definitely seek professional advice from a doctor or these helplines if you do need help. So I'm going to talk you through my journey, and I'm going to take you kind of right back to before the competitive days, and just give you a real insight of how I think like this eating disorder that I had developed, what I had, and just everything to do with it basically, and of course where I'm at now. So it all begun way back. I used to play football like for many years before like 2016, which 2016 is the year I started competing. So I used to play football way before this at quite a high level, and so this meant that I was training literally like 4 times a week, and I was playing like 2 games a week. I was going spinning, and I was a very active teenager. So I never really had any issues at all with my weight. I never thought I was fat, thin, or had too much muscle or no muscle, or that I just did not actually care about the way I looked, which is quite interesting because obviously it's very different now, and I went through a very different period of actually caring about that. I played football quite a high level, and then I decided that I no longer wanted to take this route anymore, and I didn't want to go to a higher level or put any more time into playing football. Things were different in my life, and I just didn't actually think I was good enough to be at that kind of level, to play football like that. So I quit football. I think I played like on and off, but I just basically quit all the teams that I did play for at the time. I was probably around the age of maybe 18 years old, I want to say, when my like eating disorder kind of came about. So basically, yeah, I stopped playing football, and then I noticed obviously I was still eating the same sorts of food, and obviously where I was so active before, I was able to eat like a lot of food because I was so active, so I just kind of burnt it off and it didn't really affect my body. But then when I stopped, I continued with these same like eating habits, and I had a sweet tooth and always used to eat sweets and sugar and like all this stuff. Obviously I didn't really care at the time. I didn't care at all. We didn't have any nutrition advice, which I wish we did, because not only would it have helped like if like I came to this point where I did end, but also it might have actually enhanced my performance. But anyway, that's kind of a different story there. So so I just noticed these changes within my body, and I started to put on weight. Now, a normal person like looking at me back then probably would have, I didn't like get really big, and I didn't weigh myself either. Never really jumped on the scales, to be honest, when I was younger. So I just felt different, and I guess like my body was just changing, and I didn't like it. I'm not really sure where the idea kind of came around of making myself sick, but I started to binge quite heavily, and then started to make myself sick, and I didn't know that there would be any like health implications, or it was like really bad for you, or the things that it could cause, until like later on, once I did some research and kind of scared myself. But I'll talk about that. So yeah, I got this job, and I got a job in Asda, and I was a personal shopper, which involved like literally walking around picking people shopping for like hours. So you can imagine just how many steps you would actually accumulate by doing this. So therefore my energy like expenditure was pretty high. This job was actually like an early morning job, so I did actually have to get up at like 4 a.m, 5 a.m. and get to work, and I finished about 11 or 12 a.m. as well. So no one was generally at home when I did finish work. But I started getting into this cycle where I would finish work and I would be super, super hungry, and I would eat like healthy in front of people at work, and people thought I was like into health and stuff, which I like was, but yeah, looking at me, I was eating like all the right stuff, but behind the scenes, I definitely wasn't. So after work, I was walking around. I can remember like walking around work and like just looking at stuff and being like, oh, like I want that, and yeah, it was pretty like obsessive, I would say. And then what I would do is I would buy the food after work, or I would stop off at another shop so people wouldn't see me buying it, that I knew, and I would literally just eat it within like a space of like 15 minutes. I remember eating like the caramel and Thornton's caramel shortcakes, like packs of them, and I would eat like cookies, and I would eat sweets, and I would eat chocolate, ice cream, basically like anything I could get my hands on. And then I would go home and make myself sick. It got to a point where I would actually sometimes weigh myself before, so I would wait until I did get home, I'd weigh myself before, and then I would binge, and then I would make myself sick, and then I would weigh myself again just to ensure that I weighed like less or the same as when before I started like to consume the food, which is absolutely crazy. Now I look back at it, like I just think it is really, really sad that I went through this, and I just didn't know how to deal with it, and I just kind of thought it was okay at the time. So yeah, I kept this very quiet from like everyone, like friends, family. My mum and dad didn't know. Like I say, like because I finished work early in the day, generally no one was in, but if there ever was someone in, I would literally open the windows like wide in the bathroom. I'd pretend that I was going for a shower, or I would go for a shower, but I would take ages, because what I would do is I would turn my phone up like loud with music, and I would stand it like up against the door so it would like be as loud as it could on the outside. I would really turn up the music, and I learned to like be sick quietly. So yeah, I would just be sick quietly, and then I would keep the windows wide open, and I would put the shower on cold, not hot, because I didn't want it to smell. So it got really logical, like I really thought about things, and I learned to be sick like quietly, and no one actually like knew what was going on. So yeah, I kind of kept that very quiet. It's really, really sad like when I talk about it, because I do get all these different like memories and stuff just pop into my head, and yeah, it just makes me pretty sad to think of like what I must have been feeling and going through. I can remember a time when I started then going to these fitness classes, and I used to do like back-to-back fitness classes, literally, and they would be like the aerobic ones, and they would be like body pump, and it's very intense. And I usually would go there like on an empty stomach, probably would have made myself sick, eaten like nothing before I went, and I would like look in the mirror, and I remember, I've got a picture I will post here. I remember like looking in the mirror and feeling like really, really good in myself, and I just made myself sick. So not good at all. I remember I would get home from these classes, and my dad would be like, Kerry, like, why are you only eating like a bit of salmon and veg, for example? And I'd just be like, oh, no, like just I'm not really hungry. Whereas I would probably have more food upstairs and either binge, or I just wouldn't eat at all. It was really like one or the other. I would either eat loads or I just wouldn't eat at all. So by restricting myself, I'd get hungry, then I would binge, and the cycle would just continue. This obviously started to get like really horrible for me, and like I wanted to tell people what I was going through, but I just couldn't quite find a way and kind of get there yet to a point of where I could tell anyone. I'm not sure if people around me like had any idea at all, like with any of like the obsessions I had with food, or how much food I would like buy, or the way I like look at food, or anything like that. Not really sure, never really asked. So I'm not sure if people were aware at all. I know people weren't aware that I was making myself sick, however. So the turning point, or the start to like me opening up more about this, is my dad actually started his own journey. It all kind of begun with something which I'm just going to explain, basically like Herbalife. My sister heard about this thing. It was called Body by Vi. It was Visalis. She went to like a business meeting where she was speaking about my dad's business at the time. Basically, she heard about this business called Body by Vi, and this guy was speaking about it, and he showed his transformation, which was absolutely amazing. And she obviously thought this was something that my dad could do. So she knew my dad wanted and needed help, and this just seemed like great support at the time. What it was like shakes, and it was like they had like cookies and bars and things like that. So pretty much like you guys will probably know of Herbalife. It was like that, except from the person helping knew how to macro track, and kind of took my dad on a journey of learning how to macro track and actually like eat properly. So it wasn't just shakes and bars from this company. It was broadening your kind of diet as well with by tracking macros. I heard about this and became like really interested. I'm sure at the time my dad and my sister were like why do you want to do this kind of so much? And that's when I began to open up about it and say what like I was experiencing and actually going through with my own like issues. And like I didn't reach out to any helplines like I would probably advise now. I didn't reach out to any helplines. My family didn't seek advice like for me or anything. Just I kind of like leaned on them for support and kind of found my way through it myself. Like social media wasn't really like a big thing. People didn't really like talk about stuff like this on there at the time. This was like years ago. People weren't open. I didn't really follow anyone that even really competed at this time either. So yeah, that's where my journey of kind of like opening up about this eating disorder and actually like being aware that I had an eating disorder really came around. So what happened from here is I would say like I completely went around it in the wrong way, and this was probably like down to like me not seeking advice, and like if I basically continued to diet, which is something that I would really go against in my mind now, because when you continue to like diet, you are obviously restricting your body, therefore you're still going to get cravings and things like that. So I wouldn't advise doing that, but this is the journey that I went on, and I've come out the other side. So maybe it wasn't all wrong, and there was things that I did learn. So competing wasn't like even in my mindset at the time. Didn't even really know what it was or knew it existed. I didn't go to like the gym and train properly with weights at this point. It was mainly like the food side of things, and then my dad started going to the gym, and I thought, this looks pretty cool. It's quite funny though, and my sister would probably laugh if she's watching this, but she used to try and teach me how to squat, and she used to want me to do like pull-ups with her and like things like that with kettlebells and like proper like weight training and things like that, and I was not interested. I think I would like start doing it and then I would just get like all flustered and annoyed, like trying to learn the technique of a squat and be like, no, not for me, I'm going to play football, because I still did sometimes play football. So that was quite a funny moment. If you look at the position I'm in like today and how much obviously I like having muscle and stuff like that, because I even said to my sister at the time, like, oh my god, like you've got muscle, like not a fan of muscle, all this stuff, which is obviously really mean, but that's what I thought at the time, and that's why it's funny now, because I've obviously completely gone on this switch. So one day I decided that I was going to ask my dad if I could go to the gym with him and his friends. My dad actually trained early in the morning, and at this point I had a different job, so I was able to do that. And I think my dad tried to put me off at first by saying like, oh, yeah, but I'm going to be at the gym at like 6, so you're going to have to get up early. And I was like, yeah, fine, no problem, which I turned into like not an early morning person by this point. The job probably put me off, but I wanted to train. So I did. I went along with them, and they did like I would say like kind of like, they trained chest one day, they trained legs another day. There wasn't like glutes or anything like that. They did back and delts, I think, something like that along those lines, but no glutes. And it was not really like a plan that, it wasn't a plan that I would follow now, for example. But it got me into the gym, and I think my dad, I can remember him saying to me that he really saw like a spark in my eye. So although I literally had like barely any idea what I was doing, and I remember I used to ask them like if I was doing let's just say a leg press, I'd be like, am I meant to be feeling it like in my quads, or, you know, am I meant to be feeling it in my glutes? I would always ask where I'm meant to be feeling it each movement. So I would always make sure that I was doing it right. And like, I remember finding back really hard to connect with at the time, and it used to get really frustrating. However, I still tried, and like I say, my dad saw some sort of fire in my eye, and I used to be able to just push through it. And I think that's probably from the football days. Like, my coach playing football was really strict. If you were a minute late, you had to run, like, for every minute you were late, you had to like run a lap of the pitch. And you know, like, if you felt sick, you had to keep going. If you were sick, you had to keep going. So it was very intense. We used to win like quite a lot of county cup finals, things like that. And I think that part of my mindset now does very much come back from those football days and how strict and like intense it was. And we weren't allowed to drop our head and things like that. And we were told that if we did drop our head, we had to like do spinning or something like that. It just was that kind of environment. So I think that's where it came from. I think I'm probably going off on a tangent now, but what I'm trying to say is I started to really enjoy the gym. And I didn't have any real goal at this time. So again, still wasn't looking at competing. This was like mid 2015. Still wasn't looking at competing, still just turned up to the gym and was trying to lose weight, and was still making myself sick, but not as much. But I still was trying to like stop that, but it was still happening. And the binging was less, but it was still happening. It wasn't until I think my dad actually decided that he was going to do a competition, a body transformation competition. And I decided one night that I would just start looking at shows. My dad told me way back, like, oh, I think he went and watched a show and he was like, I think you should do this. And in my mind, I expected, like, if you search women's bodybuilding, because that's what I searched at the time, it came up with like women's bodybuilding, not women's bikini. And like, I didn't aspire to have that much muscle. And so I was like, no, like, this isn't for me. And then one night I was scrolling. It was actually 1 a.m. and I think I messaged the guy who was helping me at the time with macros and just said, you know what, I think I want to do this. I say I fell into it for the wrong reason, because obviously my eating was not great still, my food relationship was not great still at this point, but I was looking at the physique and I was like, that's what I want abs. I remember reaching out to someone who was like the only person that I knew that competed, and I remember saying, like, I really want like a body like yours, this is why I want to compete. And I can remember her saying to me, is that really the only reason why you want to compete? Like, you sure you should consider this? And I thought, oh, she just doesn't want the competition. But really, she was probably thinking, this girl has an eating disorder, because I did start to open up about it, and I probably shouldn't have done it. And like, I wouldn't advise anyone to do a competition prep. I wouldn't take anyone through a competition prep having an eating disorder and going in like that, because it's just about to get even more restrictive. Back then as well, like, I decided to leave the person that I was with and got a real bodybuilding coach, and decided that I was going to go for this show, and we weren't going to start in prep until about January, February 2016, and I started, and then I continued the prep and left this coach and got my bodybuilding coach, and I joined her from like 5 weeks out. And like, a lot of people said that I wouldn't stick to the diet and like all these things, because my diet was very different. I was macro tracking. I had to switch to a meal plan when I went with this coach, and I was very much like, had a sweet tooth, so all the stuff I macro tracked was all very, very sweet, and like protein powders and protein bars. And obviously this diet plan was literally like chicken and sweet potato and things like that. And actually, something quite funny as well, when I was younger, I never used to eat veg, and I used to eat meat because I was like made to eat meat and veg by my parents, but I hated it and I used to chew it for ages. I think I used to throw a strop, I think I used to cry. My dad, when we went on holiday when I was like 5 or something like that, I remember he actually spoon fed me once because I just didn't want that kind of food. But obviously my parents wanted me to have healthy foods, like any parent would. So they did try and urge me to eat things like that, of course. So anyway, here I was 5 weeks out from my first show, and there was definitely a time at that point where I did make myself sick. I remember telling my coach, who said like, come on, like you really don't need to do this, just be like open and honest and speak to me, because I cheated my diet, and that was why I made myself sick. So it was very restrictive, this diet, very restrictive and very low calories. We only had 5 weeks to get me in, and so yeah, that was actually the last time that I made myself sick, which was I think it was May 2016. So yeah, I've obviously come a long way since then. Like I say, I'm very competitive, so it kind of, for me, it started being like, okay, it's been like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and like obviously then the weeks added into like years, and now here we are, like, what is it, 5 or 6 years later, and I still haven't made myself sick. I'm gonna go into this because there was definitely points where I wanted to and where I obviously struggled. Now, I did my first competition, and just to let you guys know, I absolutely hated it. I placed second, but I can remember hitting my poses and literally shaking, and I just felt so nervous, and it was just horrendous. I really hated it, which is funny because obviously I have carried on and I've done like 26 shows now. So anyway, I got told that I placed second and that I was actually too lean, which is interesting. And back then, obviously, I didn't have as much muscle mass, and bikini look was different. So my coach said to me, let's go again, like let's come back fuller. So we ate up a little bit, and that's what I proceeded to then do. And we came back, and I actually won that show, and there was some British finals that I had then qualified for. Now, after each of these shows, I binged hard. I literally, like, I didn't get told like not to, and I hoarded food, and that is something that I definitely wouldn't recommend. So like, as I started going into this competition prep, I would see things that I like wanted, and I would like put them in a box, and I took it like all with me. And then like afterwards, I didn't know the response of like when you've been like dry, depleted from water, and you've like gone through this peak week process to really like dry your body out as well. Your body literally responds when you eat sugar and high sodium, salt, high carbohydrates and fats. Your body it just reacts very badly. So you can hold a lot of water, and you can have really poor digestion, and it's just not great. I ate till the point where I felt so sick. I can remember I literally felt so sick, but I had no off switch. Like, obviously I'd had binging, like eating problems before, and yeah, this just seemed to heighten it. But we recovered, and I got back on plan, and that's when I went into that second show and ended up winning it. From that point there, like, it was my first year of competing, and I actually did like, I think I did 6 shows in my first year. So started in like early June and finished in like November time. In May as well, before I did my first show, my nan actually died, and I feel like that was like a lot of like built up like emotions, which probably didn't help, because I feel like I was an emotional eater. So like, even though I was holding myself back, I think when I had like these down moments, that's the thing that triggered. And that's why, like, I actually will hold my hands up and say, I literally always cheated my diet, whether it would be these binges or just generally random bits here and there. I found it really hard to control myself, but it wasn't really that important to me back then. Like, I wasn't chasing like a pro card, or I don't know, I kept winning shows, which sounds awful because I was cheating my diet, but my body obviously liked it at the time, and maybe it was too little that I was eating. Again, that's another story, and I'm going off on a tangent there, but you get the gist. I just wanted to let you know that I did cheat my diet, and I've always been pretty honest and open about that. If I ever have, I have spoken about it on social media over the years. After the shows, I found myself like wanting to make myself sick again, and like the thought of obviously going through an off season and having to put on weight to be better next time, as I begun to start kind of learning, that was a really daunting and scary time. I left my coach, like, people didn't really have, I'm not sure, people didn't really have coaches in off season. You kind of just I just had a coach for contest prep and that was it. So we just parted ways and kind of just went and did my own thing. And that took a lot of like obviously learning. And one of the things that I did do, which was like one of my biggest things, to be fair, is I scared myself by researching like what bulimia can cause. So that's like, it can literally like, your teeth can like erode. Is that the right word? It can literally really damage your teeth, and that was like scary to me. Also, like way back when I used to be sick and stuff, I used to find that like my glands would swell up, I would get bloodshot eyes, and as well when I researched it, and like I researched it because I was trying to put myself off of making myself sick again. Like it had already been like quite a long time since obviously May to like November, December. It had been a very long time since I like made myself sick, and I just didn't want to go back to that place even though I was still binging. So yeah, I looked and I could see that it caused like massive issues like internally with like intestines, your digestive system, your throat, it like from the acids and stuff, like it's just really, really bad. It can cause hormonal issues, obviously mental health issues, like it is just really bad. And I think the teeth bit, as weird as it sounds, because probably the rest of it should have scared me as well, and I guess it did, but the teeth thing scared me a lot. Like I didn't want to have like bad teeth or anything like that, or bloodshot eyes all the time. So that was something that really put me off, because I did find myself sitting in front of a toilet like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And yeah, I obviously put myself off to a point I didn't. I did forget to mention though, that when I used to make myself sick, I got like that good, and it was really annoying at the time because I couldn't make myself be sick if I ate too much chocolate, and chocolate was like my favorite thing to eat. So like you had to be really selective with the things you picked, and that is how like in depth this gets, and it's like freaky really. So I used to like line my stomach with something like ice cream first, and you could feel it still cold coming out of you. Like it's absolutely crazy. But yeah, you couldn't really have bread or things like that. That would like be really hard to make yourself sick. And I remember one time when I did, and I actually thought I was going to choke. Like I was being sick, and it was still, where I just eat so quickly, it just was like still whole, and it was hard to make myself sick, and it was actually really scary. And like there was points back then in 2015 when I did think like, geez, like I wonder if I could actually choke here. So yeah, that was going way back then, forgot to add that in. But I really want to be open here and just give you as much detail as I possibly can, because I think it's like really important to speak about this side of me, because not many of you will know. Anyway, moving forwards, so yeah, I did my own off-season after my 2016 competitive season. I did my own off-season, and like at this point I didn't like really know where I was going in life. Like I didn't really know where I was going in life, to be honest. I wanted to be this competitor, and I thought like that was what you could be and get paid for. And to me, like I still had to have like a job, and I worked like in an insurance company, and I wasn't earning much money, and like bodybuilding was my focus and my goal. And I think my parents used to get really frustrated with me because I used to put that completely first, and like I always had money to do things and pay for these shows, but like work just wasn't like important to me. And like I was getting to obviously to an age where I needed to start paying like rent and paying my way and thinking about like life. So I think they were a bit nervous by this. I didn't do online coaching or anything. I just had supermarket jobs and things like that. I did get a gym job eventually, but yeah, that was kind of that side of things. So one thing I would say about myself is I have always trained really, really hard. And obviously that is the best way to grow muscle. But way back then, and like I obviously know now how to do an off season properly, which I'll speak about, back then I didn't know. And I was constantly in this sort of restrictive phase where I didn't want to put on body fat from being such a lean like competitor. I didn't want to put on body fat, but I knew I kind of had to. So I would like eat high calories, eat low calories, do some cardio, not do some cardio, restrict, overtrain, like all these things like that just weren't great for progress. Obviously, I still did manage to progress because I just kept consistent with my training like the whole way through. But it just wasn't nice. It wasn't nice. I was doing it by myself. Like, it just wasn't a nice place to be in, especially with not knowing like where I was going like in life in general as well. Like, I just felt like now I had body fat and I wasn't competing and I didn't have this like focus at the time. Like, I feel like I was just turned into like a nobody, and it scared me, and all I wanted to do was compete again, which probably explains why I've done so many shows. I've done like 26, and I've always had really minimum off seasons. Like, up until recently, the longest off season period that I had, I think, was probably like 4.5 months. So I've always competed from like the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and always gone from show to show to show. So 2017, I got another contest coach to go into my next competitive season, and then that was literally on the back of an off season just to get shredded again, basically. So yeah, prepped with this coach again, didn't make myself sick or anything like that, which obviously I'm still really, really proud of this time. But I know I still had these struggles, and I know that I still did cheat my diet and yeah, and things like that. So I was always pretty open, again, like I said, with my coach, letting this new coach know that I did cheat my diet. And she had this method, actually, which was really interesting and kind of actually helped me mentally a little bit. So, like, if I cheated my diet, she would actually make me not do cardio the next day, and she would make me eat a little bit more food. And that almost made me, like, not want to cheat my diet. So I think it kind of put me off, because it sends your mind the other way, knowing that you can't do more. And I did listen to her, so I didn't do more. She told me, and I guess this is where I started to learn a bit more about my body, that when I was cheating, it was because like I just needed to have like a little refeed. So yeah, that was a pretty interesting part of the journey. I still wasn't a pro at this point. I continued to compete, and we made it into these shows. And I tell a lie, I did actually turn pro in that federation in 2017. And then again, at the end of the season, I left that coach again. And after each show, so obviously I did a lot, I did another 5 that season as well, you're always allowed like a bit of downtime. And for me, I would literally just binge. Again, I wouldn't make myself sick, wanted to make myself sick, had horrible digestive issues and everything, where I just literally rammed as much food as I could, still hoarded food, all things that I still wouldn't advise. But that's what I did, and that's me being honest and open. So then I got my next coach, and that 2017 sort of journey of still training hard, but this was a bit of a change for me. Where I'd like received this pro card, I thought, you know what, like, maybe this is going to be like the kind of career that I imagined, and I can make something of this. But I was really unhappy and always felt like a nobody in my off season, or if I had like body fat, which is completely different to now. And I think I just, where am I? Got to this point where I just thought, I can't be binging like this anymore. Like, it is draining, it messes up your hormones, it's horrible, it makes you have digestive problems, and I just felt like I could never relax if I wanted to be in a social environment. I could never relax if I wanted to be in a social environment or go out for food. I always like needed to know what I was eating, or would go for like just really plain options and had just no freedom at all. And then I would probably go home and binge. So it was horrible. It was such a horrible place to be in. But this point kind of came to me as I was kind of in that off season. I thought, I can't do this anymore. Like, I want to be good in this sport. Like, now I'd opened my eyes up and realised that like there's a massive world to this, and like the IFBB Pro League exists, and you can get to the Olympia and the Arnolds, and like I started following more people and like aspiring to be better. And so I just thought, you know, like, yeah, I can't do this anymore if this sport is going to make me continue to be this way and still be ill fighting eating disorders. And then I joined this another coach, and we went into another contest prep. and I stuck to plan. Definitely still, again, cheated my diet here and there because it was so restrictive. And I'm telling you that because this year, if we fast forward, is the first year I haven't cheated my diet. However, I will talk about that again just in a minute. Hopefully you guys aren't getting bored yet, because I know this is a bit of a long sit down talk, but we're getting there.